Hey, this is Matt Breckwald, your host on the Off-Farm Income Podcast. Welcome to episode number 3. And thanks very much for joining me today to talk about all issues farming and income generation, how to support this farming enterprise that you have so passionately tried to achieve. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk a little bit about my thoughts on different ways to generate cash flow when you're progressing with your farming enterprise and you're trying to be innovative and give yourself the flexibility to farm, but you still need to produce some income that's coming from elsewhere because your farm isn't quite up to that level yet. We'll talk about some of those ideas today and give you an experience that I went through or that I experimented with to generate some income from my farm in something where I looked at market conditions and kind of thought outside of the box and found a way to generate some extra revenue to help support our little farm here in California, Idaho. So thanks very much for listening. I hope you enjoy this episode, and I look forward to speaking with you in the future.
Hi everybody, Matt here, talking to you from the road today. The hay prices have gotten so high down in the Central Valley of California because of their drought that it is now economically feasible for me to drive my hay down there and sell it. So I'm making a quick run down to the Modesto area, selling about 3.5 tons of hay, and then I am hauling a thoroughbred horse from Oakdale back up to the Boise area and getting paid to do that as well. And I'm hauling a little less hay than I'd like, but instead of dragging my flatbed trailer down to the Modesto area, I'm dragging my stock trailer down, which is going to hold just a little bit less hay. But the trade-off is hauling this horse back, so it was kind of a good opportunity to have a load going both ways. So I bring this up because it's a good example of ways that you can find cash flow to help fund whatever level of farm income you need when it comes to producing off-farm income. Now, in my particular case, we're still developing our farm. We're about halfway done, but we applied for and received funding from the NRCS, or the Natural Resources Conservation Service, which is all designated in the Farm Bill on the conservation side of things. And they're going to convert us over from flood irrigation with runoff of herbicides and insecticides and fertilizer and things like that into a creek. They're going to convert us to sprinkler irrigation. They're also going to convert us from low efficiency type grazing to rotational grazing, and as such they are cost sharing somewhere in the neighborhood of 75% of the cost of putting all of that in, which is a great program in my opinion, and we're taking full advantage of it. But with that going on, there's a lot of cash outlay that's going to come up in our future here soon, because we're still responsible for 25% of the cost of a big irrigation system going in, which is going to involve a supply line coming from an irrigation canal to a bubbler and then to a pump, and then main line going onto one side of our place on the east side of our creek to irrigate pasture, and main line going across our creek and up through the middle of our alfalfa field to irrigate our alfalfa, and the addition of sprinkler lines and a wheel line on the alfalfa field. And for those of you who farm over on the eastern side of our country, what I'm talking about right here in terms of wheel lines and bubblers and sprinkler lines and stuff like that's probably all very foreign to you. And I'll tell you, when I'm irrigating, I'm very jealous of you sometimes that you don't have to deal with that. But then on the other hand, I've got reliable and predictable water, and you don't. I'm going to digress for just a minute and talk just a little bit about this NRCS funding that we're getting. And the reason I want to do that is I've heard people refer to it as welfare for farming. And I think it's the complete opposite of that, and I want to state my case while I have a chance and while I bring this up. So, I've had a couple people bring this up and make jokes and not necessarily be saying something to me to be combative or something like that with me, but trying to make some sort of a joke that I'm taking welfare from the federal government or something like that with this NRCS funding. And I just don't see it that way, and here's why. So after years of working in the public sector in law enforcement, so working for the government, but for a local city government, and then teaching law enforcement and learning more and more about the criminal justice system and how it works in our country, it dawned on me one day that this funding through the NRCS is no different than funding to police departments, funding to school districts, funding to hospitals, funding to electricity companies. It's no different than any of that. And here's the main premise behind it. The federal government, the way our system of government is set up in the United States, they really do not have the authority to come in to, say, a Boise Police Department where I used to work and say, we want you to police in this way. There's nothing in the Constitution that gives them the authority to do that, so they can't do that. Now, that does not stop the federal government from having an agenda and having them want to see things done a certain way. A good example of that would be seatbelt enforcement. The federal government, for whatever reason, really wants to see law enforcement taking an enforcement role on people wearing seatbelts. But what they don't have the ability to do is to come into a city and say, you shall now start writing tickets for people not wearing their seatbelts. So what do? Well, what they will do is they will come up with funding for that. So, for example, they'll come up with $50,000 and they'll approach a police department like the Boise Police Department and they'll say, hey, we've got a grant for you here, $50,000. All you've got to do to get this $50,000 is to assign police officers to do nothing but traffic enforcement for the purposes of writing seatbelt tickets. We want to see how many seatbelt tickets you've written. We want their time to be allotted 100% towards writing seatbelt tickets, and that's all we want. And then if you do what we want you to do, we'll give you this $50,000 to pay your employees. And the police departments like it because they've got more officers out on the street. They've got higher visibility. They're getting their officers some overtime. And there's a lot of positives for them. And so they will go and they will conduct the seatbelt enforcement for the $50,000. It's not welfare. The federal government is essentially paying them to do something for them. It's the same in education when the federal government wants to see, when they want to see all children included in the classroom, special ed, and everyone included, no child left behind, that type of thing. You know, they've got money to fund that. It's the same in fish and game enforcement. It's the same everywhere. How about the electric industry? You know, it's not a governmental agency in a lot of places, but the government wants some say in how they produce and supply electricity, and they provide funding for that. They provide funding so the electric companies will promote conservation of electricity. So with farming, not to say there's not some programs out there that just give money to farmers who are having a hard time, but in the sense of the conservation side of the Farm Bill, it's not welfare. The federal government is paying farmers to go out and do what they want to see done because they don't have the authority to step in and come to somebody like myself and say, we want you to practice rotational grazing, or we want you to convert from gravity irrigation, flood irrigation, to something more efficient like sprinklers with less runoff. They don't have the authority to do that. If they walked onto my place and they told me to do that, I'd laugh them off of the place. They don't have that authority. But what they can do is they can pay me to do it. Now, it turns out that irrigating in the fashion they're setting me up and doing rotational grazing, I find those both to be very positive things. You know, it can raise my carrying capacity on the farm with what I'm grazing, and it's going to make irrigating easier, and hopefully it's going to give me higher yields on my alfalfa fields. which should at least hopefully be a wash on the electric bill for running the pump. So there's some positives there for me, and I still have the choice. But essentially, they are paying me to do something. I am agreeing to practice agriculture in a way that they think is better in exchange for the money. Now, I want to do it this way, and that's where the money's coming from. But I just wanted to make that clear that it's not a welfare type situation. It's a situation where, in this case, both parties are going to benefit, but they are essentially trying to promote an agenda. This has been voted on and agreed upon by the Congress and the Senate and the President through the Farm Bill, saying that we want to promote these certain conservation practices. And how are we going to do that? Well, lo and behold, we've got to put aside some money to pay people to conserve resources in this manner. So that's what it is, and I thought I would explain that for a second, just to clear up any misconceptions about this being welfare for farmers. So I was faced with, I need some additional cash flow coming in. My primary method of off-farm income, the gopher business, is winding down right now. Teaching, I'm teaching college, 3 classes this semester. That's going as predicted, but that's set, and that's all budgeted out. So I needed to come up with a way to create some additional cash flow. So I've been watching these hay prices around these areas where they're getting real high. The Seattle area, the Central Valley of California, and looking at it and going, well, at what point is it cost feasible for me to run down there? Now, of course, the extra cash flow I'm going to make taking this hay down to California and bringing this horse back is going to help us in the implementation of this NRCS project. But my hourly rate on doing this is horrible in terms of driving all the way down. So I had to load the hay last night, get up early today. It's going to be about a 10 to 11 hour drive down to where I'm selling the hay. Got to unload the hay and stack it, and then I got to go pick up the horse and bring the horse on back up to the Kuna area where I live. So my hourly wage is going to go way down. So it then becomes a question of, well, is this a prudent thing to do? Does this make any sense? Or can my time be better served to make better money in some other way because of the hourly return I'm getting on this? So what I decided was I needed the cash flow. I wanted it to help with this project. And so I decided to record an episode in the truck on the way down so I could be multitasking, I guess. I can be recording an episode for the podcast and talking about off-farm income and kind of the process there on the way down while I'm driving. So I'm kind of trying to get 2 birds for 1 stone. In addition, I've got a list of different business owners who I want to interview for the podcast and learn how they make their businesses work, their small agricultural service businesses. And so I'm going to be making phone calls to them on my way down as well. Hands-free, of course, safe driving. But I'll be making phone calls to them on the way down as another way of duplicating that. And then if I'm not even more of a glutton for punishment, I brought my computer with me. So when I have some downtime, when I'm down here in California, I can work. So just in full disclosure, where I'm heading is where I grew up, down in Stanislaus County of California, really rich agricultural county. And so I've got some connections, and that's aiding me with selling this hay rather than putting an ad on Craigslist and trying to line up a buyer who may or may not be reliable. I was able to do that through some connections I already had. And I'm going to go ahead and spend an extra 2 nights down there to visit with family and friends. But I'm going to have some downtime on Saturday night for about 5 hours, so I'm going to work. So all of this goes to the point that eventually, if you're going to do the same thing and you're going to try and make this transition, whether it be from out of the city to the country or from out of the corporate world to farming for yourself and working for yourself, you're going to go through a lifestyle shift. And I thought that'd be a great thing for me to kind of diagram out here, because I definitely went through a lifestyle shift and started really having different perspectives as I grew towards this big transition, and I wanted to lay a couple of those out for you. So if you've listened before, you probably already know my story, but my long story made short, for those of you who have not listened before, is that I had always wanted to pursue something in agriculture. I grew up very rural. I went off and got a bachelor's degree in animal science at Montana State University, worked on several ranches, worked in commercial production agriculture, in the row crop industry, and ultimately found myself disenchanted with sales. I did not have a ranch or a farm to go home to, and I needed to go out and get a job when college ended. And so I left agriculture and I went into law enforcement, and I found myself some 15 years later living in the city, working in the city, and so far away from my original goal and really the identity of the person who I was that I needed to transition back. So what I want to talk about today is a little bit of what happened to me when I kind of got caught up in that city lifestyle. And there's nothing wrong with it, but it just wasn't for me. And I suspect if you listen to this, that it's not for you either. But here's some of the things I discovered. And driving down to California today in my pickup really is a stark reminder of this. So after we moved into the city, we started living that city lifestyle. And in the West, it's probably different than if you're in a big city like New York or Baltimore or Chicago or something like that. But out here in the West, in a city like Boise or a Salt Lake City or Portland, Oregon, or any one of those cities like that, we are so close to so much public ground that a lot of what we do is we work for the weekend, and then when the weekend hits, we are gone. We are out of town, and we are backpacking, or we're fishing, we're kayaking or rafting, we're camping, we're riding ATVs, we're hunting, we're doing something like that. And so I fell right into that pattern, and it's not a bad pattern, but it's certainly something that I went right into. And before I knew what happened, I had a nice house in a nice neighborhood, and I had a 4-door, long bed, 3/4 ton Dodge diesel, brand new. And it's funny because my wife came off of a ranch and farm, and I grew up around that, and ultimately got a lot of farm and ranch work in late high school and through college. And we went to buy my pickup, and we decided we just could not intellectually buy a short bed. Nothing wrong with short bed people, but we both had come out of agriculture, and we decided, hey, we need a real pickup, quote unquote real pickup, and we got to have a long bed. So here I was living in the city with a diesel pickup, 3/4 ton, because I wasn't going to buy a half ton, 4 doors with a long bed, and it was the most impractical thing for living in the city that you'd ever seen. But that's what I wanted. That's what the people I'd grown up around, that's what they had. That's what I was after, and I was kind of repressing my desire to be what I'd grown up around, living out in the country, working in agriculture, working blue collar. And so as a way to kind of replace that, I went out and bought a big pickup that was pretty impractical for living in the city. So lo and behold, I had the pickup. Well, now what am I gonna do? Well, now it's time to buy a trailer. So we bought a big travel trailer because I got this big truck. What are we gonna do with it? Well, we got to pull something. So that became a big travel trailer. Well, now what are we gonna do? We can get out somewhere and we can camp, but what are we gonna do then? So then I went and bought 2 ATVs. And so pretty soon I'm one of these folks going down the road, and hey, nothing against these folks. When I see them, I'm jealous because now I'm working. Although I like my work and I like my lifestyle, I wish I could have my cake and eat it too. But pretty soon we're going down the road, and we got my pickup. We got racks over the bed of the pickup. There's 2 ATVs stacked up there, and we're pulling about a 27-foot travel trailer with a slide out behind us, heading down the road for a 3-day weekend, and every weekend looked like that. And as time went on, what started to happen to me was I started to feel like I'm being frivolous with my money. And I'm not saying that about any of you, but for me personally, I felt like, okay, I'm being frivolous with my money. And for the main reason was I was putting so much money into assets that were depreciating and they weren't making me a dime. Now, I didn't know that at the time, but now looking back on it, I know that's what the problem was, is that I bought this big expensive pickup, and of course I drove it off the lot and it depreciated significantly, and I don't get to write off a bit of that depreciation, by the way. And I bought this nice trailer, doesn't make me a dime, goes down in value, costs money to keep it up. I bought these ATVs. They're a lot of fun, but they're going down in value. And pretty soon I had all this money invested in all these assets that were going to eventually be worth nothing, and they were never going to make me a dime. And I started to struggle with that, and that became a big struggle for me, living with that. So ultimately, I started wanting to find ways to convert these assets into things that were money making. Obviously, they were never going to appreciate in value, but I wanted to convert them into something that might generate income, and that seemed like a better fit for me. So when we bought our farm, one of the first things we did, and sad to say, it was a sad day for both of us, my wife and I, is I sold the trailer. That was never going to be a money-making asset, and I knew going into the farm that we were going to be busy and our camping trips were going to be reduced. And as a correlate to that, we had gone camping for Father's Day that summer, and my daughter and my wife and I went up and we took the ATVs, but we did not take the trailer because of where we went, and we camped in a tent, and our daughter absolutely loved camping in the tent. And we thought to ourselves, we both grew up camping in tents and never used trailers until we bought our own. And here we have this little girl, and right now she thinks camping is watching movies and playing with dolls in a heated bedroom that's totally dry. And it's not the experience we had, and certainly isn't the experience that made us love going up to the woods and camping and stuff like that. So we decided to sell the trailer. So that got sold. So once the trailer was sold, then the question became, well, I got this big pickup. I don't want to sell it. I got these ATVs. How am I going to resolve this conflict I've got within myself? So the gopher business was born, and I was able to buy a flatbed trailer, and I converted one of our ATVs to a work vehicle, and it pulls the gopher machine around. The pickup became a work vehicle. It pulls the trailer that holds the gopher machine and ATV around, and then the other ATV got devoted to the farm. And we can go ride them for fun still if we want to, but quite honestly, I haven't licensed them for that in a couple of years now, as they're just being used for agriculture and for my business. And so that conversion of those assets became a big deal to me. When we bought the farm, there was just a little old John Deere tractor, two-wheel drive John Deere tractor on it, and I negotiated that into the sales price of the farm, and we bought that little tractor with the farm. And it drove me nuts that I wasn't going to be really doing any real tractor work with it. I did things like scraping the driveway when it snowed with it. I used the front end loader. I mean, that's an indispensable tool. So I used the front end loader quite a bit. And I dissed a little bit and harrowed a little bit. But truly, I wasn't going to be doing any farming with this tractor. So what I started doing is going out and bidding people's gopher jobs. And when they had a big piece of land that was covered in gophers, I would bid doing the groundwork with my tractor on that piece of land before I ever went in and treated for gophers, and I was able to convert that tractor over into a money-making asset as well. So that's kind of been a theme of mine, is in order to build wealth and to be prudent with our resources, to really try and invest my money in things that are either going to appreciate or are going to generate income for me. And I've got this is like a Zen statement I'm going to make, but I've got more inner peace, if you believe in that type of thing, from now using the things we buy to actually generate income. And if I'm making it sound like I'm all work and no play, well, I'm a lot more work now, but I'm a million times happier, so that doesn't bother me at all. But no, we still play. We still take my grandpa's old fishing boat out and go fishing. We still run up and go camping. We just do it out of a tent. We still go out and we have a lot of fun, but we have a lot of fun on the farm as well. And that's been a big shift, and that's been a big improvement. And it kind of comes down to something I always say, which is you got to do the math. And sometimes when you do the math on a certain way of doing things or a certain thought process, one way comes out to be a real positive and one way comes out to be a real negative. And I'll give you an example. But right now, with having fun on the farm, when we're doing activities where we're on the farm, and we might be trimming the hooves on the goats, we might be vaccinating the cattle, maybe we're AIing the pigs, maybe we're stacking alfalfa bales, irrigating, whatever it may be. We're out having fun, and then the evening gets done and we sit outside and there's a beautiful sunset, or dove hunt or something like that on the piece of property. But I see that as a double positive, and when I talk about doing the math, I try and look for those. And I see it as a double positive in the sense that we're doing things that are building our farm, we're enjoying ourselves, we're creating equity in our place, we're creating income in our business, which would be the farm, and then we're also providing values and giving really hands-on, common sense, and practical education to our daughter, which is a big deal. So we're having fun. And I don't know if fun or happiness can be quantified, but we're having a particular kind of fun. And doing this 100% of the time, all the time, is not going to be a strategy that's going to lead to success for our family. I'm sure that my wife and my daughter both are going to want to have fun in the form of laying on a beach a few times a year. They both really enjoy that, and quite frankly, so do I. So there's got to be that type of fun too, where you're just completely unplugged and you're not worried about making money or anything like that. You're just enjoying that time with your family and kind of the world that God has created for us, sitting on a beach or camped by a mountain stream or something like that. And that is definitely necessary. But I like to look for the double positives, the triple positives, to where you could look at what we're doing as just receiving one outcome, but actually we're receiving 3 or 4 outcomes. That education, that fun, that family bonding, the building of equity, the generation of income, the experience, the learning, all of those types of things. And I'll give you another example of this, and this is where this concept first dawned on me, and I don't dare try and take credit for this concept. It's just dawned on me, and I'd probably heard it somewhere else, some other time, and then finally realized what it meant. But when we were still living in the city, I was a detective. And when you're a detective at the Boise Police Department, at least they give you a car. So I had a take-home car. So for 5 years, I drove back and forth to work, free gas, free car, and no insurance to pay or anything like that. And I worked in a job that had a lot of stress that you brought home with you. That stress that doesn't go away, that chronic stress. And so I had that caseload and really high stress cases, really high stakes in my cases. And so for 5 years, I had a desk job essentially, went out to lunch every day with my partners. I drove to work every day, and I got fatter and fatter, and that stress built up. And luckily for me, when I get stressed out, food's one of the ways that I deal with that stress. It needs to be running, but food's one of those ways. And so anyway, by the time I got done being a detective and decided this was no longer for me, I was overweight and not happy with that, and I was stressed out and looking at the situation. So when I decided to leave detectives, I had to give the car back. And so now, and this is what I'm talking about doing the math, so now I'm having to give the car back. And so here's the mathematical equation of the two options that I'm faced with. Option number one is to go very conventional, which was hop in my truck, drive that back and forth to work every day, which is a 20-mile round trip every day in traffic, spend somewhere in the neighborhood of 45 minutes to an hour every day sitting in my pickup, commuting back and forth to work, paying the fuel cost plus the wear and tear on the truck, and getting to work tired and grumpy, and getting home from work worn out, tired and grumpy, and plopping on the couch. That was option A. That's the conventional option, and that's an option too many people choose. Option B was hop on my bike. Hop on my bike, ride my bike the 10 miles to work and the 10 miles home, and don't spend a penny on gas. Don't gain weight, but lose weight from all the riding I'm doing. Feel great when I get to work. When I get home, not only feel good from another endorphin release, but be done with exercise for the day. And really get really good exercise in without sacrificing almost any time with my family. So if you think about that for a minute, when I started doing the math on this, if I drove my truck to work, I was going to be in my truck 45 minutes to an hour each day. So 20 to 25 minutes or 30 minutes going to work, and the same coming back and dealing with that traffic and that additional stress of that traffic. If I rode my bike, it was going to take me about 45 minutes to ride to work and about 45 minutes to ride home, most of that on a bike trail with a huge hill, a major elevation gain right at the end where I really had to pump it up the hill coming up to the house. And so I was going to get great exercise, but it was going to take me an hour and a half a day to get this exercise. But I subtracted off the time I would spend commuting, which on the best day would be 45 minutes. So that meant that I was going to be spending an extra 45 minutes working out away from my family, but I was going to be getting 90 minutes worth of exercise. To me, that math worked. It cost me nothing. I felt great. I took a lot of pride in riding my bike to work, and I got great exercise, and I lost a bunch of weight. Was a happier person. I felt better. I mean, all in all, it was just a fantastic decision, and that's the best way I know of illustrating that concept of doing the math, which is look at the two possibilities and which one offers you the most positives and which ones, offers you maybe just one positive but a couple negatives that go with it. And so back to talking about us trying to farm and live this agricultural and this rural lifestyle. Well, where do you find those positives? And it's going to be a lifestyle transition, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's negative. I mean, after all, this is your dream, right? This is what you want to do. You want to live out in the country. You want to be around those types of people. You want to farm. You want to ranch. You want to have livestock. Those are the people you admire and respect, and you want to be one of them. Well, there's your positive. So how do you make this into a double, triple, quadruple positive and escape those potential negatives? Well, I got to tell you that this whole concept of going out and having a farm is a very romantic and pastoral concept, but it's not free. It comes with a lot of work, and the work doesn't scare most any of us, but what does get to us eventually is the unpredictability and the something has come up and you have to deal with it right now. Some coyotes got in a couple years ago and ate some of our goats. Well, that was something I had to deal with right now. Got a cow out, the fence is down. A horse knocked down the electric fence, and our perimeter fence is not charged, and we got to do something about that. The irrigation water's coming, and there's a break or there's a huge leak because of a gopher hole or something to that effect. So those things come up. So you have got to get yourself in a position where the realities of not just having but managing your farm, whatever size, do not become a burden to you in the sense that because of your primary profession that you don't have time to deal with the things that come up and you don't have time to actually take the enjoyment of having the farm. Because remember, that's part of those multiple positives is the fun and the enjoyment and the pleasure that you get out of living this lifestyle. But if you can't enjoy it because you're too stressed out from commuting 45 minutes, an hour one way into work because you still have the city job, and then the things that have to be done at the farm just become one more thing on your plate that's stressing you out, all of a sudden you're going to start resenting that farm. You're going to start resenting that lifestyle, which is going to make you think this is not for me. It might make you give up on that dream, which in reality it is for you. It is the right thing for you to do, and deep down inside you know that. It's just that the way you've set it up is kind of ruining it for you. So you gotta make those choices that lead you to those multiple positives. And I'm telling you right now, if giving up some material possessions and giving up some income are what you have to do to make sure that the farm always remains a refreshing and rewarding experience and something that you wake up and you feel very lucky to be able to do, then you need to do that. And so looking for those multiple positives, trying to eliminate those things that aren't going to contribute to your success, like I did with the travel trailer, or converting things that aren't contributing to your success to things that are contributing to your success, and coming up with innovative ways to generate cash flow, kind of thinking outside of the box, doing things that you've never imagined doing. I'll tell you right now, I'm transporting this thoroughbred horse back to the Kuna area in a couple days. Never have done that. I'm not a horse person. I've been a cow person ever since I got interested in agriculture. I've ridden some very, very good cow horses, ridden some good horses in the mountains, and I've always had fun. But I've just never been one of these people that have fallen in love with horses and knows everything about it. But it's a new experience, something I can chalk up to maybe something that'll help me out later. I'll tell you right now, I don't want to go back to work for an employer at some point in the future where my entire schedule and life and my ability to do things I want to do are dictated to me by another person. And certainly there's a business out there for transporting horses, and I would much rather do that than get a 9-to-5 desk job at some point in the future. So I chalk this up to a learning experience. I can tell people I've done it before. I'm excited about all the possibilities this lays out in front of me, even if this is not something that I ever wind up doing in the future. So give it some thought, but think about turning those positives into multiple positives and eliminating those negatives, converting your assets, and setting yourself up not just with the farm, but with a lifestyle that's not going to let you start thinking that it was the wrong decision. Make sure you set yourself up for success from the word go. Well, good luck to all of you, and I hope you have a great day, and good luck with your off-farm income ideas, and hopefully I can help you get going in the right direction.
Hey everybody, thank you very much for listening to this episode number 3 of Off-Farm Income. That was a pleasure for me to do on that long drive through Nevada. You know, one of the things I mentioned in there that I found interesting, because I'm recording this outro for this podcast just a couple weeks after the fact, after I made that run down to California to sell hay. And to let you know, I've made another run since then. But the interesting thing to me is I was talking about the fact that I was bringing that horse back from California. And I'm not necessarily a horse person, and I'd never really done that before. But since that time, I've actually got another offer to run a horse, this time from Idaho down to Livermore, California. So like I was saying in that podcast, you know, even though it's not something I'm pursuing, even though it's not something where my expertise lies, it's something that can keep me in this lifestyle if my other ways of generating income fail for some reason, or if they're not working out for a short time or something like that. And what do you know? I've actually got another offer to make a hay run and bring a horse, except this time take the horse down to California. So I've got some experience with that now. I've done it before. I can say I've done it. And here's another opportunity for me to generate some income that way. So you just never know what's going to happen. Be innovative, be outside the box, and just enjoy the journey. Enjoy what you find going on as you experiment with these different ways to support yourself and to take care of yourself and to be financially independent. Okay, so a couple things. I want to direct you to the resource page on the Off-Farm Income website. If there's more information you want about what we talked about today or anything else we talk about on the Off-Farm Income podcast, go to offincome.com. That's offincome.com/reading-list/. And on there, I've got a bunch of different podcasts listed that have been very important to me in my development and my ability to break away from those golden handcuffs of my employer, of that good, quote-unquote, good job that I had with all that security. And these podcasts have helped me to break away, gave me the confidence to do that, and also the tips and advice I needed to get my business going, to market my business and be successful. And they're all listed right there for you, and they're all hyperlinked. So if you're looking for other material to listen to that's going to help you accomplish what you're trying to accomplish, there's a lot of good resources listed there. I've also consumed a lot of books. At least for me, for my reading style, I've consumed a lot of books in this journey. Now, like I said, and like I've said before, I'm not exactly the most risk tolerant person out there. So this journey has taken me about 5 years. But during that course of time, and then especially after I launched my first business, the Idaho Gopher Control, I really started consuming reading material and started consuming books on tape. And I've got a list of those there actually in an Amazon store. And if you want to support our podcast, man, it'd be great if you're going to buy any of those books, if you buy them through our link there on the Amazon store. And then we get a little bit of kickback, and that helps to support the show, helps to support us and what we're trying to do here, and helps to bring you the content that you're looking for. And hopefully we all win as we get you good content, and then you build your businesses and you succeed. So if you can click through there, you can support our show and you can get some great reading material. I've put in my own words and my own advice about each one of those books that's listed there, how they've helped me, and what my thoughts are on those books. And I've categorized them for you as well, at least in terms of how I think they will best serve you. There's another link on that page. You can just click on that. If you're going to do any shopping on Amazon, if you really want to support us, man, that's a great way. It is such a win-win-win situation, which is what we're always looking for. You win because you have a way to support this podcast that you've been enjoying, and it's costing you $0. We win because anything you buy off of Amazon, we get affiliate commission back on that. And then, of course, Amazon wins because you are shopping there and you're buying your products. So if you're willing to do that, that's at offincome.com/reading-list/. So if you're willing to do that, thank you so much. And as always, if you want to contact me, you can reach me at matt@offincome.com. And for more information, feel free to email me and also take a look at our show notes on our website. And have a great week and go out there and get it going. Get these farms rolling. Get yourself immersed into agriculture and just start loving that journey.